Capitalism doesn't just exploit workers at home, it exports terror abroad. Today we dig into the Iran-Contra affair, a textbook case of imperial violence, state lies, and how Reagan's America funneled death and chaos into Latin America, all to crush socialism and preserve corporate control. I'm J.G. Perkins, and this is Cancel Capitalism. Okay, so the 1980s weren't just neon lights and Wall Street cocaine. They were a battlefield for the soul of Latin America. In Nicaragua, the people had overthrown a brutal U.S.-backed dictator, the Somoza family, through a socialist revolution led by the Sandinistas, a Marxist-oriented movement fighting for land reform, education, and independence from U.S. imperialism, as many of these third world countries do. So the U.S. ruling class was extremely terrified at this prospect. Not terrified because Nicaragua was a threat, but because revolution is contagious and they were afraid, it was going to spread that close to home. And, the last thing capitalism wants is workers rising up and seizing power, right? I don't really have to argue that, do I? So enter Ronald Reagan, the hero of corporate America, the Gipper, the cowboy actor turned president whose entire foreign policy was a front for protecting capital, controlling resources, and punishing any country that dared challenge U.S. hegemony. To destroy the Sandinistas, Reagan backed a group of far-right militias known as the Contras. Let's be clear that these weren't freedom fighters like Reagan claimed that they were. They were death squads trained by the CIA, funded by American dollars, and they left a trail of raped villages and assassinated teachers and mutilated civilians in their wake. Congress eventually said enough, passing the Boland Amendment to ban the U.S. aid to the Contras. But imperialists don't follow rules, and Reagan and his cronies wanted blood, and they were willing to go behind the backs of the American people to get it. And this really wasn't in my script, but I feel like I should mention it, that the Contras were also selling cocaine. And I think that's kind of strange when you tie it to the Reagan administration and the fact that they released crack into inner-city black neighborhoods. But that's not what this episode is about. So now we get into Iran, the arming of them and the lies that were told. So at the same time, Reagan had a problem in the Middle East. Iran was under embargo. It was officially labeled as a terrorist state, but U.S. interests needed leverage in that region. So here's what they did, okay? They secretly sold weapons to Iran. Iran paid them millions of dollars, and instead of reporting it, they diverted that money to fund the Contras in Nicaragua in open defiance of U.S. law. That's actually high treason. It wasn't just illegal, it was a black market foreign policy. A shadow government run by Reagan's inner circle, using illegal arms deals to fund right-wing death squads while preaching freedom and democracy to American public. So here's the cover-up part of this and the consequences. There weren't very many. That shouldn't be a big spoiler, but I suppose I should make it a spoiler alert. When the story broke in 1986, it should have been the end of Reagan. I mean, as it probably would be of anybody. I shouldn't say that of the president, honestly, but it should have been the collapse of the American myth of our superior morality, the myth of American excellence, I should say. But the capitalist machine kicked in, and Reagan said, "Oh, I forgot. I can't recall. Remember that part of the Wolf of Wall Street when they were brought in for questioning? The people of Stratton Oakmont were brought in for questioning, and they were like, oh, I don't recall. I don't recall, Chester Ming putting that donut in his mouth. They're like, no, I don't recall. That's kind of what I picture Reagan doing there, but I digress on that. Or I shouldn't. Should I even say I digress there? I don't know. Words are hard. So Oliver North, Colonel Oliver North, the U.S. Marine, he shredded documents. Nobody high up went to prison. And Reagan, he left office adored by all conservatives and boomers, old people, that sort of people. The people with money loved Reagan. Later canonized by neoliberal Democrats and worshipped by the corporate media as a Cold War hero. It makes me want to throw up, honestly. And we demonize men like Joseph Stalin in this country far too often. But I'm not even going to voice my opinion on that. But what was the cost of this, you should ask? There were thousands of dead Nicaragua people, not Nicaraguans, or the entrenchment of U.S. imperial dominance in Latin America. A message to the world saying, if you dare fight for socialism or anything better for the people of your country, we will destroy you. By any means necessary. We will put our foot on your neck so that you cannot breathe and you will starve and die. That's what we're telling. Then we like to stick our proverbial members in every beehive around the globe. So the Iran-Contra affair was not a mistake. It was just a regular function of the system that we operate under. Under capitalism, human life is expendable, exploitable, and truth is negotiable. State violence is justified if it protects the profit and the power of the higher-ups. This is why every socialist movement in the global south is demonized, why leaders like Allende, Castro, and the Sandinistas were targeted, because capitalism cannot coexist with collective liberation, i.e. communism. I said the spooky word. So the U.S. didn't fear Nicaragua because of its weapons. It feared Nicaragua because it proved another world was possible. A world without landlords, a world without imperialism, a world without Ronald Reagan. And having something like that so close to home was very scary. And they had to stomp it out because they can't compete with an actual government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So Iran-Contra was not an anomaly. It was American policy, business as usual for the empire. If we want to build a just world, we have to rip the mask off of these war criminals and bury the myths that keep capitalism alive. Reagan was not a hero. He was a war criminal in a cowboy hat. And capitalism, it's the real enemy that we have to cancel, because the name of this show is Cancel Capitalism. There, I name dropped it. This has been Cancel Capitalism. Subscribe, share, and remember, you can't vote out the empire, but you can organize to end it. And I recommend direct action, but you didn't hear that from me.
Headed for a land that's far away, beside the crystal fountain. So come with me, we'll go and see the big rock candy mountains.